welcome in, everybody. Happy Tuesday. It's the On Texas Football Tuesday live stream brought to you by Texas Electricity Ratings. Every Tuesday night, we talk Texas football for an hour or so, get you caught up on the very latest. CJ Vogel, Rod Babers, Aaron Hogan holding it down and watching some Texas baseball as usual on a Tuesday. Not as big a game tonight as was last Tuesday with the Aggies, but Incarnate Word in town, so we'll keep you posted on that ball game. Always a good thing to fire up the ball game from the dish, turn on the On Texas Football channel and talk some Texas football, turn that sound down for an hour or so, and we'll talk some Longhorn football. Get you caught up. Obviously, we're 1 week out to spring football. So we'll do some spring football previews and just thoughts, general conversation, what we expect to see and what we'll be most looking for coming up with the Longhorns month worth of workouts ahead of the spring game. Texas will also have their pro day coming up on the 20th. So a week away from that as well. Talk about the pro day and the guys who shine so brightly at the combine. How many of those guys are going to work out even here on their friendly soil? We'll talk about that. But the topics of the top of mind right now, guys, one in Austin. We're getting a lot of texts from all over the country, all over the state of Texas, of course. There's Phoenix City, Alabama. But in Austin, if you're not here, they're having South by Southwest. South by Southwest is going on, the big interactive media conference, and then the music picks up tomorrow. Raj, you were down there this weekend for a third Longhorn event. Apparently, Jay Hartzell and UT have kind of taken over the legendary Antones and making it their, Longhorn spot in South by Southwest. I give Jay Hartzell credit for putting the Longhorn brand down among the young people, the media brand, and you had some third and Longhorn stuff with our buddy Nick Shuley. It's pretty cool that Hartzell is being aggressive with that, saying we want the Longhorn brand to be featured at one of the biggest media conferences that happens all over the world.
Yeah, no, it was actually a really cool event, and shout out to all the folks there at Texas, the Hook'em House at Antone's. So our Longhorns crew, Derek Johnson, our man Fozzie Whitaker, Jeremy Hills is a part of that crew, Alex Okafor, shout out to Nick Shuley, and shout out to my man Higgs as well. We finally had a live version of Third and Longhorns. Quandre Diggs was the guest, and it was perfect, because it was a perfect segue to what was going on in the NFL. We did not know he was going to be released before we booked him as a guest. We had already booked him, and then he ended up being released. So I got a chance to ask him about the safety market in the NFL and what he thought about it, which we can talk about a little bit later on, because that affects Texas. Texas got a lot of safeties in the league, actually. Really representation there. But that was really cool, and it was a great event, man. And actually, I got a chance to listen to some of the other panels that were talking about NIL and talking about social media and the kind of the activation of brand awareness, all these different things. And honestly, I'm smarter for it, but it was a great event. Also, shout out to brand innovators. I also got a chance to, and courtesy of On Texas Football, also got a chance to go to Lambert's with brand innovators and take part in NIL social media event that involved Cam Williams and Bodie Owusu, the defensive end from A&M, in an eating contest for for an NIL event, and the winner got $2,000 on Cash App. Oh, it was legit, and I hate to say it, the Aggie actually won, only because Cam Williams irresponsibly ate nacho appetizer before the brisket sliders eating competition. I think that's why he ultimately lost, but he withdrew from the competition. He couldn't do it. He just he was overwhelmed by the young man from Aggie land. So I'll give the Aggie props on that one. But it was a fun event, had a lot of good times, a lot of good stories to share, and a lot of good Longhorn football enthusiasm out there for what this team is going to do this spring, and what the fans are going to see this spring. So a lot of people buzzing about Texas football. That's pretty much what the event was all about.
Yeah, very cool. And obviously in Austin, we know about South by Southwest and its growth and impact. And back on Friday, Meghan Markle was here, the Duchess of Sussex. I mean, CJ, you're paying attention because Sydney Sweeney's in town tonight. Big movie premiere, the hottest actress in Hollywood. You're like ready to go down and shoot your shot. Go meet her. I mean, everybody's everybody. Stephen A. Smith's here, filming his show. Austin becomes kind of the media capital of the world for a few days, and I do think it's smart of Hartzell to get Texas involved in that. I mean, you're right down the street. Why wouldn't you? The Hook'em House at Antone's, right in downtown. It's pretty cool. I think that's it's very very smart to be putting yourself front and center in that type of an environment for all the world to see. And the Longhorns are getting a lot of center of attention conversation because of it.
Yeah, I think in years past, you would have looked at a weekend like South by Southwest as a reason to commit to Texas, a reason to join the program because of what was going on around the university. I like looking back at, going to ACL one year and looking up and seeing Jack Harlow and Bijan Robinson on the same stage together as just one of those things in which it's a extra kind of, fun activity that you get to participate in as a Texas Longhorn. At the point, it was a selling point to join the University of Texas and go to Texas or go to school in the city of Austin. What came around the university in terms of ACL or South by Southwest or even CODA in the F1 track, that was all great. It was great to go out and see that part of Austin while playing football. Well, now your selling point is the University of Texas football, and all of this is gravy. You get the sprinkles on the cake while getting the slice as big as you want with the participation as a Texas Longhorn football player. So the selling point has changed, but all the fun activities that you get to participate in as a result have not. And I think now the opportunities to get more involved in opportunities like Rod had at South by Southwest this past weekend is certainly more prevalent and available now.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. And Antone's, if you don't know, you're not from Austin, legendary blues bar. I mean, it says everything about Austin, Texas. The legendary Antone, Stevie Ray Vaughan got to start there, and it's bounced around to different locations, but it is still the legendary Antone's in downtown Austin. All right, so we got Kay Brink here jumping in early. We got just want to touch base on Nick Saban's speech, preaching nothing but facts. Has to be a cap coming. Hook 'em, guys. Did you see Nick Saban at the in front of Congress today with Ted Cruz and all those? I mean, he was pretty passionate about it. I'll have my thoughts, but just your guys' general thoughts on Nick Saban. I don't disagree with anything he said. I do think the NCAA, everybody's been slow to react and are trying to be reactive now to a system they could have changed along the way. But in the end, it's not the same college football Nick Saban knew. I'm sure you guys have seen those comments he made. What were your thoughts?
Talking about obviously NIL and the lack of guardrails, the lack of checks and balances, the lack of any really enforcement of any NIL rules, guidelines, every state having a different law, a different NIL law. So state to state, there is no real unanimity really with the law, and every state is really just trying to get their state schools some type of advantage in recruiting and in the new NIL landscape. Yeah, I mean, right now, it without any authority in college football to enforce any type of NIL rules, and without really these states having, or at least the schools, their compliance would have to enforce the law, because I don't think the state is going to send out any police to enforce the NIL laws. I haven't heard anything like that. So they're still relying on compliance, which is self-policing, for these institutions, which is also, a bit of a dirty business, right? That is, you kind of walk in the line there when you ask an institution with a new law like NIL law to police themselves with it. I mean, there are lots of problems. There's no question. And I don't think the NCAA is equipped to deal with these problems and these issues. We know that the courts, the highest courts in the land, have essentially told the NCAA that they believe that they're a borderline criminal enterprise, that they don't have the support of the highest courts in the land. Let's just say that they continue to lose in court anytime they go. So essentially, the NCAA has been gutted. They don't really have any power anymore. So they're with that void that right now exists in college football, there needs to be some type of entity, some type of authority that can actually enforce these NIL rules, guidelines, whatever they may be. And there needs to be either a federal law, or at least under that new authority, there needs to be some form of a uniform law that everybody follows, not that's fragmented with different language state to state, and you can do this and do that in that state, and you can't do it in the other state. That is crazy and wild, and that's why it is the Wild Wild West. I said when the NIL laws were passed and they started to spread like wildfire, that's essentially what you're talking about, is the free market hidden college sports. And I said the NCAA is a dinosaur and the NIL is the meteor. It is going to destroy that thing as we know it. It will never, or at least it'll break away. Major college football will and do its own thing. So I'm not surprised where we are right now. But something needs to happen, and quickly. They need to expedite whatever the evolution of the sport is going to be. It needs to start happening now.
Yeah, I think that was the general conversation, CJ. But I will say one thing I don't like, and I think a lot of because I need to go watch Nick Saban's entire statement, but I think the clips that I'm seeing, he talked about his wife, hosting recruits and talking about it's not like it used to, and all these kids want to know about how much money they're going to make. I will not allow the leaders who have allowed it to get here to make it about the kids, right? I mean, look, every school chooses and chases every penny they can find, focused on dollars. I mean, that's what they do. Every conference realignment situation and has been about dollars and TV and money. The coaches who change jobs all the time, chasing dollars and chasing a contract. Nick Saban had it in his contract that whenever if a coach passed him on the highest paid coach, he would get a bump above that $1 million. So what I can't have is that we're going to now blame the kids that are now making some money, the product, the players that are making some money. You can't blame them that they don't care about winning anymore. They don't care about development anymore, as some people have suggested. It's the adults' fault to never have changed the system to be ready for this, because it was obviously going to happen at some point. But you can't be revisionist to say, oh man, these kids now don't care about development or leadership or winning or commitment, all that. Come on now. I mean, you adults have been chasing the dollars for decades now. Now all of a sudden the players are allowed to cut in on it, and you can't turn and point fingers at them, in my opinion. As long as that doesn't happen, I'm good with the structure and the rules and the governance and all that, but let's not blame the players.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we've seen with a number of coaches, just the ever-changing landscape when it comes to what their responsibility now entails when it comes to coaching and developing these kids. You talk about what their main approach is to going to college. Well, now, in many instances, it is how much money can I, kind of bring into my family. And I think that's a big change. We've seen it college basketball. A number of those older coaches who were kind of on that doorstep of retiring or stepping aside saw the changes in college basketball and said, you know what, this is not what I need to do anymore. And especially when things got a little hairy when it came to the Adidas scandal years ago, kind of pushing prospects to schools that they knew wore their gear, their shoes, their brand, whatever it is. Things get hairy. You saw the FBI get involved. Guys went to prison as a result. And now I think as a result of some of this lawlessness that you see in the NIL world, it's not worth it for a number of these guys. What's interesting to me, and I think it was pushed on Twitter a little bit. I think Clay Travis mentioned it on his morning show, and it was Josh Pate who actually brought it up again on Twitter this morning. But how long before some of these teams that make the college football playoff have guys on their team saying, you know what, like I'm going to the NFL next year. Pay me a little bit more before I start, opting into these playoff games. Well, that's something Alabama had to deal with last year. There were guys on that Alabama team last year that said, you know what, if you want me to play a 13th, a 14th, or potentially even a 15th game, that NIL deal is going to have to look a little bit sweeter than what it was, because right now that's not going to cut it for what I want to be when it comes to going to the NFL to fulfill my dreams and get that guaranteed money. That's a conversation that has already happened and Alabama had to deal with right now. And I think that was one of those final sticks or kind of hurdles that Nick Saban looked at and was like, yeah, this isn't college football that I know about. Like, this isn't the game that I've coached in for the last 30 years, especially the game I have dominated in the last 15. What is this? And I think at that point you look in the mirror and you say, everything going on in the world of college football, it's not what I want to deal with right now. And you see it every now and then with these coaches jumping to the NFL job for a position that theoretically is a step down from what they were.
Well, and I get Nick Saban at Congress. Hopefully, do we need the federal government to legislate? It's possible. Is that the best course? Even today, Ted Cruz said there's a 50-50 chance that a law could be passed this year that would create some uniformity. Because I agree with what you just said about, players. But, Rod, this as a former player. Now that the players are included, hey, listen, deals are negotiated. Because now when you come up with these new rules, you're going to have to cut the players in on what we're agreeing to. Because now the players are involved, and they should have been a lot sooner in a lot more organized way. But at the same time, to make a deal, players have to be included and have a voice.
Totally agree. And then you're talking about some type of unionization, right? They gotta if they're gonna have a negotiation. They'll have to be collectively bargained. Those things are collectively bargained by unions, and then we got a whole nother conversation starting. So, or maybe there's probably a loophole. Listen, the NIL was the great compromise between pay for play and the old scholarship system, which we all agree was broken. All right, it was not modernized. That was way too antiquated. So NIL was the great compromise. Now, it was a great idea. We need guardrails on it. It needs to be tweaked a little bit. Everybody agrees with that. Essentially, what we're dealing right now is an overcorrection for all the exploitation of decades of the student athlete, right? So I got no problem with that for a while, because I wish I was a student athlete right now. They deserve it. Go ahead, get it, and it'll be another correction happening here pretty soon. And that's what the Nick Saban on Capitol Hill. That's what this conversation is about. But I'm with you, E. There's no way now you can't close Pandora's box. The free market has hit college sports. It's official. And now the player empowerment era has officially started. They got to figure out how they're going to negotiate this. And I'm sure maybe there is a way to do it without them unionizing on the other side, which that's nobody really wants to see that, because then truly we are talking about that's just another pro sport. That's officially. And I don't know if we want to do that, but I mean, we're probably as close as we're going to get to it. I mean, we're nudging our way to it surely, but slowly but surely.
Well, and again, the adults in the room have to, and Nick Saban might be a crusader for good, right? I mean, understanding it's not the same, but he knows what it needs to be. And one of the things they're asking for from the federal government is an antitrust exemption so they can avoid lawsuits, right? So whatever the governing body is, CJ, that comes in, that they form, that runs football or runs college athletics, the reason the NCAA is lost is they lose in court every time, and they, going broke over court fees and legal losses because the system was, a sham, essentially, the way it was being run. And every judge that it got in front of agreed with that, including the Supreme Court. So there has to be, that's what the NCAA is asking for, or whatever that governing body is going to be, is some type of protection from the federal government from these lawsuits, with the agreement that it's going to, but again, you have to include the players, you're going to have to include the universities, the conferences. It's tough to get all these, cats herding these cats and get everybody on the same page at this point. Mm-hmm. The fact that the water's running, and as Rod said, the free market is already running its course.
Yeah, and I like what Todd's pointing out in the comments as well, is who's going to really sit in the corner of the players themselves. And I think that's something that's really interesting now. And you see a lot of prospects kind of, I don't want to say get taken advantage of early on, but we saw some buzz coming out of College Station a few years ago following that #1 recruiting class that, kids hit the portal and they immediately hit the social media like, hey, before you agree to anything, if you want to talk about it, like, let me know, because we understand what it was like to be promised a lot of things before we step foot on campus, and then stepping foot on campus, not seeing that those promises come through to fruition. So it's interesting, because now you also, with the portal as well, you get to the point where if a kid enters his name into the portal, there's 3, 4, even 5 guys that represent that kid, quote unquote, and they don't necessarily have that kid's best interest at heart when it comes to finding the next place for him to grow, develop, and become a better man and football player. It's all about how much can I, kind of raise this price and see what I can get for myself, which is unfortunate, because again, it is just taking advantage of what these kids have, going for them right now, which is a lot of football talent behind them. So it's really interesting. And I do think there needs to be some sort of, certification or agency board that you have to go across if you want to represent these kids. If college coaches are going to call you on the behalf of a prospect entering the portal, there needs to be some sort of consistency in which every single player who enters the portal has one designated coach, player, mom, dad, whoever it is, to sit there and say, this is who I'm representing, and kind of, work as a faux agent, if that makes sense, in the world of college football, because it is free agency. As you talked about, Rod, it is the new world of college football, and there has to be some sort of guidelines and boundaries in which these kids are not getting taken advantage of against their own will in a way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Actually, that was one of the topics we discussed at the panel where we discussed NIL with the Brand Innovators crew. I mean, we talked about the exploitation. There's just, listen, it's capitalism. It's the free market. So you want to make sure you put in the right guardrails to guard against that type of stuff. But the great quote is, every great cause begins as a movement, turns into a business, and eventually becomes a racket that's capitalism. It's almost hard to guard against it. And that's essentially, you want to slow that process. That's essentially what you want to do, because the free market is the free market. It's a force of nature. You can't stop it. What you want to do is slow that process down long enough for you to get a handle on it and find out exactly what guardrails you need to put up and what laws you need to make. Because right now it's so new and so brand new, nobody even knows what the hell they need to regulate. Like, what do we need to regulate here? What's actually fair? What's free market and what's not? And you most of that stuff will probably end up in court. But that's the whole point, that they need to, at this point, just try to figure out exactly where NIL is going. Nobody really knows where it's going. This thing is evolving. Hell, we read about a deal where the broadcast networks were trying to put together an NIL package to try to keep Caitlin Clark in school one more year, because she's just a ratings monster. And I was like, I didn't even know broadcast networks could do that. Like, I guess they could. Damn. So broadcast networks can put together NIL packages. That's amazing. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. I don't know. Maybe it depends on the state's law, wherever you're at. But it's amazing. I don't think we know creatively how crazy this thing could get. I just think we're on the cusp, right? The precipice of it.
Yeah. I saw a deal where, what was it? Alabama was involved in maybe a college basketball tournament in Vegas where the players share and the winners, right? There's a big pot of money, and
it's like, what?
They all get some money. Yeah, I mean, the creative process is going to be there. It obviously going to be an ongoing conversation. I think we'd all agree, even those like myself and Rod and CJ, I have advocated for the players being cut in on the revenue for a long time, but done properly, done in a fair way. This isn't sustainable either, because we're watching in the NFL, the collectively bargained, fair way of free agency, right? I mean, you become a free agent after X, and here's the rules, and here's how you play it out. And I know there's even players in the NFL, Rod, that aren't happy with it, but that's controlled. It can't be where the NFL, where college football, at the end of every season, every player can go wherever he wants and sign wherever he wants and cut deals wherever he wants. I mean, that's not sustainable, without a doubt. I mean, Patrick Mahomes would be making $100 million, $1 billion without a salary cap. So, and the NFL has kind of figured it out. The college football model is going to have to evolve, without a doubt, now that the free market is invested in and involved.
I wish I had a kid that was just reasonably athletic these days, because we'd maximize that NIL dollars. This is the greatest time in the history of college sports to be a college athlete. There's never been a better time. This is it. And this is going to be it, because pretty soon, as he's talking about, they're going to put some, federal regulations on this, and there'll be some laws, and then they'll cap some things and how much you can make and who can make what and who can offer what. Right now, it is the Wild Wild West, and there are no rules. There are no real laws. Nobody's enforcing those laws. This is it. This is the glory days. Glory, hallelujah.
Yeah, speaking of Caitlin Clark and people her ilk, I mean, gosh, without a doubt, Livy Dunn, we know, and then just so many that are raking in dollars, and finally, rightfully so, but there has to be some structure built around it. Yeah. Speaking of that, Rod, and free agency in the NFL, we appreciate that super chat too, by the way, that launched a really good conversation here on our Texas football live stream on a Tuesday night, brought to you by Texas Electricity Ratings. Free agency in the NFL, by my count, 3 or 4 Longhorns have moved teams. Jordan Hicks to the Browns, 100 tackles a year he puts up now. I saw where the Denver Broncos have added Caden Stearns, or no, Robert Jones. Brandon Jones already had Caden Stearns. So now 3 members. I know I saw Malcolm Brown sign with the Broncos today. So 4 members of the Longhorns, now former Longhorns, are now on the Denver Broncos. What do you see that they like about these defensive backs, Rod, in Denver? They're just kind of stockpiling now. And what did you learn from Quandre Diggs? Where is he going to land when it's all said and done? Any ideas?
No, he did not give me any scoop. I did mention that the Texans should be in the Quandre Diggs conversation. They should at least be inquiring about him, because I think he might be inclined to give them a hometown discount. He didn't say that, but he did basically say the next contract is going to be his last contract. He's going to sign. He's pretty much going to retire after that. And I didn't think about it. I mean, that would be his 9th year in the league, and realize he had been in the league that long. And one thing Quandre mentioned that's really interesting, it'll connect to the Denver Broncos, who have the 3 Texas DBs on their roster right now, which I don't know if that's ever happened before. Quandre, I asked him about playing every position in the secondary, because when I started doing some research on him, I realized he played every position. Man, he played Came in as a cornerback, played nickel at Texas, went into the NFL as a nickel, moved to corner in the NFL, and then eventually Matt Patricia moved into safety in the NFL. That's really rare for a guy to play every position pretty much in the secondary. He said he enjoyed playing nickel more than any other position, but most of his plays, big plays, were made at safety. Because he's such a really good, instinctual football player, high football IQ, great football investigator. He was able to diagnose clues really well. I think you give him more clues at safety, he makes more plays. But anyway, I digress. It got me thinking about how versatile Quandre Diggs was and how versatility was a key component in the reinvention of DBU when I was there. I mean, Quinn Jam, pretty much when you look at all the defensive backs, a lot of the defensive backs, more than half of the DBs that were drafted or went to the NFL as undrafted free agents since Rod B was on campus in 1999. Half of those guys played multiple positions on the 40 acres or played multiple positions once they got to the NFL. Quinn Jammer, myself, Nathan Vasher, Huff Daddy, Michael Griffin, Aaron Williams, Kenny Vaccaro, Mikael Thompson, Quandre Diggs, Adrian Phillips, the PJ Locke. It goes on and on. And I don't think it's coincidence that Sark, when he's talking about these young DBs he's bringing in, that one of the most common traits he describes about their skill set is versatility. He went on and on about versatility, 3 position players, and 3 position, I think he means corner, safety, and nickel. So he mentioned that when he talked about Kobe Black. He talks about versatility a lot with this group. You got Makuba coming in who can play any position in secondary. I had Dabo Swinney say that. Jahdae Barron, he should be right now. I think they should promote him in terms of his Thorpe Award candidacy because he's, taking the jersey from Huff Daddy. So he's supposed to kind of continue the Thorpe Award tradition of at least being in the running. I think the way for him to do it is to promote himself as the most versatile DB in college football. He can play nickel. He can play corner. I think he can play safety too if you need him to play safety. And I think getting back to that versatility, it's going to be an asset for Texas in an era where everybody's trying to manipulate and engineer one-on-one matchups that are advantageous to the offense, trying to manipulate formations, personnel groupings, so they can find matchup advantages against the defense. The more versatile you are on defense, the fewer matchup advantages they're going to have. And the fewer matchup disadvantages you'll have because you'll have guys who have a versatile skill set who will be able to handle the various threats and problems that an offense is going to present to you. They want you to be a force. What you want to do is turn a run defender into a pass defender, turn a pass defender into a run defender. Sark does it all the time with his formations and tight formations. He wants DBs getting in on the run because DBs can't tackle. Well, if you do have guys who are versatile athletes, guys who can tackle like a Quandre, he's small, but he can hit you, and he's a sure tackler. Then when they try to bring him into the box, they figure, all right, the one-on-one we're going to create is that corner or that nickel going up against this running back in the hole. It ain't an advantage like that. Not against guys who are versatile in their skill set, who can be forced run defenders when they need to be. So versatility, man. I get back to it. I don't think it's a coincidence. And that's when Texas DBU was at its zenith and at its apex when they had a lot of guys, defenders that could do that. I remember Coach Akita telling me, Earl Thomas, he said to me, I had him at nickel before I moved him to safety. And then we moved him to safety. He made so many damn plays, we never moved him back. But he said initially I put him at nickel because of his body type pretty much. And he's a guy that probably could play nickel if he needed to. And that's what Coach Akina looked for, that type of versatility in guys. And I think they're looking for it again.
Rod and CJ, one of the things I've read from multiple spots and, the insider reports and you guys doing a great job with it too, that Jahdae Barron might be playing some corner here as we get to spring workouts and get to spring practice. And this goes to Rod's exact point, CJ, about position versatility. I've seen, we got Makuba in place now. You got Terrence Brooks and Manny Muhammad, Derek Williams evolving, Michael Tass back there. But, man, Jahdae Barron, trying to showcase his skills as a corner. We know he can do it. Even on down to reports that Jalen Gilbo is having a real good winter and really emerging. This just sounds like depth and versatility as Rod talks about it. And there's a lot of guys, even some of these incoming freshmen, the Xavier Filsames and Jackson Rubel and these kind of guys, a lot of different players, but Rod's key word, versatility, trying to be, multidimensional as players.
Yeah, 100%. I think at this point, you're really looking at this Texas secondary group as 100% positionless, whether it be maybe aside from guys like Terrence Brooks, Malik Muhammad, who have kind of proven that they want to stick on the outside, you know that Andrew Makuba can spin down into the nickel spot. Jahdae Barron last year at times in Texas's most important snaps on the field had snaps at safety and outside cornerback. I think he can prove that this is what he wants to do, and he's coming back for a reason to show off once again that there is versatility to his game. Jalen Gilbo is getting snaps outside at outside cornerback as well. Wardell Mack is getting snaps on the inside at nickel as well. So you talk about guys being able to move all over the place defensively in that secondary. Texas is really getting a lot out of them, and it won't be surprising to see just how many different variations of the same secondary pieces you can get from Texas this spring when it comes to just providing different looks and keeping that same group of guys on the field, but without having to sacrifice, two guys spinning down into the box, or, having to play three deep at a time to get what you want out of a certain look. There's going to be a lot of opportunity there for Pete Kwiatkowski and that Texas secondary staff to really unleash a lot of potential, because there is an increase in athleticism now. You talk about guys like Xavier Filsaime coming in, Andrew Makuba joining the fold, Jahdae Barron returning and playing at 100% health, which is not something that we saw a whole lot of last year. He put up great years, had a great statistical season as well, but there was still a little bit in which he wanted to get out of himself a little bit more, and that's what we're hoping to see this year at full health, plus all these guys to hopefully take a little bit of the load off of the responsibilities that he's asked to take control of.
Rod, any thoughts on all that?
No, I agree. I think I'm and CJ basically gave way more insight into the actual guys that are being moved around there. Like I said, I don't think it's a coincidence at all. I think Sark is doing this purposefully, and I think they want to be a defense where they don't want to give away too much information to the offense based on players who in terms of the rigidity of the system, players who will always be in the same spot. And Jahdae Barron didn't go to when they would do formation in the boundary. A lot of the times you didn't see Jahdae Barron go to the boundary. He would stay to the field side, and then that's when they would try to pick on the safeties when the formation in the boundary. A lot of the times when Texas on the boundary corner would stay on the boundary side, often wouldn't travel. That's because they weren't in man concepts, but he would always be on the boundary, and the field corner wouldn't play bump and run. The field corner was always off. There were just a lot of things that were predictable about the Texas defense at times, and they gave the offense too many easy solutions. Hey, let's just throw the quick out here, or to throw the quick slant here. Or we know that Ryan Watts is going to be in press man all the time on the boundary. Let's just take the shot here. We know the nickel doesn't travel. Oklahoma State took advantage of that a little bit in the Big 12 title game in formation and boundary. They were just little things, and I think when you're just tweaking it, when you become more positionless on defense, you don't give away so many of those things because you are more malleable. You're more flexible. You have basically more built-in solutions built into the structural integrity of the defense because of how versatile those guys are. And hey, you know what? We can just spin down Makuba. We ain't got to travel our nickel. We're going to spin down Makuba. He's going to become a nickel on the formation and boundary. And we're going to spin back Jahdae. Hey, Jahdae, you should become the safety. We're going to be malleable like that. And we don't even need to give that away. All right, you won't even know. You just go, oh man, I guess he's the nickel now. And then you're trying to identify. The quarterback has more questions in his pre-snap about who to identify, who's what. That's where I think they're going. And just from watching the defense, that's an easy solution. That's just getting better athletes, as CJ said, and you got better athletes now that can execute that vision. I don't know if you had that before. Now you got those. You got Derek Williams, who, in my opinion, can play nickel. If you need him to play nickel, can play safety. We know Jahdae can play any position in secondary. Makuba probably as well. Terrence Brooks, listen, but before Terrence Brooks came to the 40 acres, Dad's a footwork coach, so he's got great footwork, kind of natural footwork too. It's muscle memory from him. It's ingrained. Remember, Ohio State was thinking about him playing nickel. They had him just as a defensive back. They were thinking about him playing nickel and maybe even playing safety potentially. I remember talking to scouts before he came saying, oh, he can play any position in secondary. And his dad told me that. All right, because his dad's an NFL guy, played college football at A&M, so he's been training his son as a DB, not really as a corner or a safety or a nickel. So the truth is, you want to move him inside, move Ja'Day outside. I really think you really could make it work. I don't know if he'd be as good as Ja'Day at the nickel, but I think he could do it. It's possible. So I just think the versatility, man. I think that's where they're going, along with more foot speed, more coverage specialists.
All right, good stuff. And obviously that's, as we've talked about here on the Texas Tuesday live stream, the pressure on for Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon to show an improved secondary this year, because it does feel like they have a lot of pieces, and you kind of see the vision where PK and Sark want to take this bad boy. Rod, real quick, as we talk about you being a sponge and absorbing things at South by Southwest and information all the time, all your guys at Third and Longhorn, when next week, when Texas has their coaching school and Sean McVay is here from the LA Rams. I mean, if you're Sark, right, you're going to get some time with him and then pick his brain on football. That's part of the reason you bring a guy like that in, to speak to the high school coaches at your coaches' school. What are you asking Sean McVay? What are your late night sitting around the office conversations with one of the best in the business?
That is good, man. Yeah, well, I mean, he's probably already stolen a lot of Sean McVay's concepts. I'm sure of it. If I am talking to Sean McVay, what would I ask him? I'd probably, if I'm Sark, I'd probably ask him about using more motion and more motion at the snap, motion before the snap, and targets to motion. And I know people are like, man, Sark uses a lot of motion anyway. He does. And he's probably at a 55% rate of motion on 55% of his plays, somewhere around there, maybe a little bit higher. But man, guys in NFL now, guys, they're at like 70. Mike McDaniels in Miami, he's at like 60 and 70% of the time. He's got a guy motion and moving. So even your 55% now, it's probably closer to the average than closer to, the guys who are weaponizing it the most. And they're all from the Shanahan coaching tree. It's Sean McVay, it's Kyle Shanahan, it's Mike McDaniel. I think Sark needs to use more of it. And if I'm him, I'm asking Sean McVay, hey, how do I incorporate more of it? Like, what's the keys? What are your ways that you use it as a cheat code? Because Sark used it a lot, but I think he should use it more. His targets to motion rates are insane, which is when you target a player in motion at the time of the snap or before the snap. And I think within his offense, with all the speed, it just gives guys basically a running start to try to get leverage advantages. So that's kind of what I would throw out there if I was Sark. For sure.
Good stuff. And we need to get into the Mel Kiper has his new big board, which we'll talk about coming up. We'll do that for sure coming up. But CJ, wanted to talk about some posts you had on Twitter today about the guys you're most excited to see come spring practice. The 5 guys on offense, 5 guys on defense that you're watching. This list could go on and on and on. But if you're doing a tweet, you got to pick 5. And I thought it was interesting. An interesting conversation starter, but you run through the guys on offense that you're most looking at, just because of whether it's positional battles, whether it's replacing a previous starter. Who are the guys on offense that you're most interested in hearing how their 4 weeks go?
Yeah, offense was fun. I tweeted out this morning. We'll start at 5 of Amari Niblack at the tight end spot, and simply because I like what he brings at that position with his skill set, being able to run as much as he is, plus that big body frame. That he can stretch the field vertically and kind of hit those over routes at the 12 to 15 range that we saw Steve Sarkisian return to with JT Sanders so often last year. That becomes a big thorn in the side of defenses when you talk about the verticality and the speed you have to account for on the outside. Well, now you got a really, really talented tight end right out there in the middle of the field that's running scot-free. And you've seen what he can do after the catch as well. That was a guy who actually probably broke 3 or 4 tackles en route to a 40-yard touchdown against Texas in Tuscaloosa when they played earlier this year. So he was number 5. I actually had his former Alabama counterpart, Isaiah Bond, at 4. He was a little lower than I think many expected, simply because I think we know what he is. But at the same time, he's kind of penciled in to being that wide receiver 1 because of what he was able to do at Alabama when it came to 650 yards receiving a year ago, multiple touchdowns, the big catch against Auburn in the Iron Bowl. He is on pace to be one of those day 1, day 2 wide receivers taken in next year's NFL draft. And there's a reason why he came to Texas, and that was to play with a talented quarterback like Quinn Ewers and improve his draft stock. So he was at 4. I have freshman Ryan Wingo at 3, and who wouldn't want to see what a 6'2" wide receiver with 10'5", 10'6" speed can do in a Sarkisian offense, having seen him in San Antonio this past year. I mean, tremendous athlete. He has all the tools to be a phenomenal wide receiver at the University of Texas, and he's already impressing in winter conditioning and off-season workouts. So really excited for him. Jonte Cook is number 2, and I'm going very heavily on the playmaking side of things here on the offensive side of the ball because they're all brand new pieces. But for Jonte, he's the one guy with some familiarity here with snaps. He had 8 receptions last year. We got a glimpse of what it was like to see him on the field, but not a whole lot. And this year with him taking that step up, but also being, quote unquote, the old guy in the room now as a result of having a year under his belt, he's kind of having his own leg up on the competition in the wide receiving room, coming in as a guy that was a borderline 5-star guy and one of the best wide receivers that I've covered in the state of Texas. What he can do with a guy like Quinn Ewers or even Arch Manning throwing him the football is going to be very, very special. So I'm excited to see what steps he takes this year going into his sophomore season at the University of Texas. And number 1, I mean, Rod, you just talked about him, but Cam Williams at right tackle. He is that guy, the favorite in the clubhouse right now to take over Christian Jones's right tackle spot. 6'5", 6'6", 360 pounds. Doesn't get much bigger than that. And again, being able to cover him over the last couple of years in high school and now into college, he is going to surprise some people, and he's going to shoot up mock drafts. Maybe not as far as he would be after 2 years, but after this year, we're going to be sitting here thinking, maybe there's a good chance that he ends up getting drafted because he is that talented. I'm really excited to see him, kind of go play in and play out at that right tackle spot. He's really impressive, and I think he's going to be providing a higher ceiling for that Texas offensive line than what they saw a year ago.
It's good stuff. He's a mauler, man. He's in the run game. In the run game, he's one of the most, I would say, physical run blockers that I've seen on the 40 acres in a long time. Pass blocking wise, that's what he's got to work on a little bit when he goes against a speed rusher because of his size. But guys, he carries that what they say is 360, whatever it is. He carries it extremely well. I mean, it feels out. He's got a big frame. He's 6'6" and every bit of it, long wingspan. But you're right, NFL scouts will salivate when they stand next to that dude, man, because he looks like something out of a Marvel's movie or something.
That's absolutely the case.
Oh, E, you're muted, E.
Sorry about that. I'm thinking about he next to DJ Campbell on that right side. I mean, that's a long day for a defense. I mean, those two dudes, they're not just big but they're nasty. I mean, they're physical. They want to road grade you. You bring a guard around too and pull and whatnot in the power packages. This is what Sark, I think, has envisioned for sure. But just the mass. But you saw him up close, Rod, at that eating contest down at Lambert's. I mean, he doesn't look. He looks like a lean athlete. He's just massive.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what is shocking is that it doesn't, the weight and the mass lays across his frame. It just does not look like he weighs 366 pounds. I know he does because you see somebody that big, but it's just more that he's just a massive human being. It's not any bad weight at all, and he almost looks like, you don't want him to, but he could put on some weight and he still would carry it really well. So I can't wait to watch him move. I mean, I almost wanted to see if he could just run from it real quick, get down the stands and take a couple of steps, because I just want to see that that frame and how he moves with it this spring, because, just more time in the strength and conditioning with the strength and conditioning coaches. Those offensive linemen, unless you're a prodigy like Kelvin Banks, usually they don't start to hit their developmental stride until they've had a couple of years in a college, strength and conditioning program. Now, these guys coming out of, where did he come from, CJ?
Duncanville.
Okay. Yeah. Now, that's a little bit different too, because they do have high level strength and conditioning programs, and they do have, they probably on another level there at Duncanville. Most offensive linemen, they don't hit their developmental stride until they've had a couple of years in the strength and conditioning program with a dietitian, nutritionist, and they get closer to that grown man body. And it's crazy to think, I don't know if he's got his grown man body yet. That's the crazy part. He still may be just in his kind of mid, teenage to grown man body, which is a crazy thought, no doubt.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
One thing that's going to be really fun to watch in these spring practices is that battle again between those two Duncanville stars, Cam Williams and Colin Simmons. The two of them went at it in high school against each other. Obviously, there's a 2-year age difference there. But I was talking to a source near the program the other day who was basically saying, yeah, when they did that in practice back in the day, it was a good battle going either way at times. You never knew who was going to get the upper hand, whether it be the youngster Colin Simmons or the big body in Cam Williams, who's 2 years older, as I mentioned. Now that they're going into that same kind of war room in the trenches now in college 2 years later, it's going to be really interesting to see if Colin Simmons still has that, kind of speed upper hand there, or if, Cam Williams with that, time in the weight room is going to sit there and say, yeah, not anymore, youngster. Like, I got a spot to win right here, and you're not going to get the best of me now. So that's going to be really fun to watch and kind of keep up to date with whenever these guys get back up and face each other once again.
Yeah.
CJ, what about your defensive guys you're going to be watching most that you're thinking about a week out? Offensive guys, good conversation. What about the D?
Yeah, the defensive one was fun too. There's more on the defensive line here than I thought, I guess, going back to the playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. We know what the trenches are going to look like. Defensively, we really don't. So I started with Jere Bledsoe at number 5. I just think at this point, you need to know what you have with him. Is he going to turn it on? Does he have that athleticism now that he's around 290, 295 pounds? What kind of impact can he take in a rotation in which he expects to be a large part of? So he was number 5 for me. I actually went Xavier Filsaime, the freshman out of McKinney, at number 4. Just again, he's been probably the MVP of winter workouts from this early enrollee class. He's walked in with a tremendous mindset. I actually had one of his coaches at McKinney call me the other day and said, you know what, like, this is who he's always been. This isn't going to go away anytime soon. So get ready to see it for the next 3 or 4 years. This kid is going to come here to work, and he's going to work his tail off to get on the field very early. Obviously holds all the physical tools that you need. And now it's just all about finding a way onto the field and what is, kind of a revamped, kind of loaded strength of the defense in that safety room. Sticking there, Andrew Makuba was number 3 for me. Again, just a former freshman All-American joining the safety room that Texas desperately needed last year. And now that they finally have him this year, you expect more and more out of this group. His trainer, Bernard Blake, out in the Austin area, basically hit me up on Twitter right after I posted this. It was like, yeah, he's been getting after it all offseason long, and Texas fans are really going to like what they see from a movement perspective, plus moving back deep to safety where I think he's a little bit more comfortable. You'll start seeing that football IQ start jumping off the page a little bit more. So, and then number 2, Trey Moore, the UTSA edge. We've talked about it, Rod, in the past, but kids that understand how to get to the quarterback know how to get to the quarterback, and Trey Moore is one of those guys. 22.5 sacks over the last 2 years at UTSA. Texas needs a guy that can really put a stress on the opposing line to, kind of cause schematic changes and really stress the opposing offense in that way. So he was number 2, and then going the opposite way, Colin Simmons at number 1. Again, just what he can do as a former 5-star guy, 6'3", 235, 240 pounds. What he can do off the edge is not like anything Texas has seen in previous years. I think he has just tremendous potential to be a monster edge prospect for the Longhorns during his time in Austin.
Nice.
Great stuff. Roz, any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I love that he put, Trey Moore and Colin Simmons, both of those guys at the top of the list, because Texas hasn't. He broke it down. Colin Simmons, they hadn't had an edge with that type of upside in a really long time. And then Trey Moore, who's a guy that's just a proven commodity as a pass rusher. He's a pass rushing specialist. And I think, Texas coaches, they are having I think it's a humbling moment for them. And I think it's smart, though. I do think they looked at their development and looked at the patterns of development and decided, listen, there's some things that we're not equipped to coach. And we need to just recruit those things and prioritize those things, and then we'll develop the rest of it. And I think a few of those things, we know speed is one of them for Sark overall, size, big humans, of course. But I think on defense, it's been pass rushing ability, and it's been coverage specialists, guys who can just flat out cover. And They figure, what, we're going to teach them. We'll teach them about, leverage. We're going to teach them about fundamentals and the technique, and we'll teach them all those different things that it takes to be a high-level football player. But let's just recruit guys or bring in guys who have the natural skills to do the things that we cannot coach. And that's, you can't coach somebody on being a great pass rusher. Best pass rusher on the team, arguably last year, was Anthony Hill. Even Sark said that. And hell, Byron Murphy was probably the second one. And maybe they taught Byron Murphy how to be a great pass rusher, but I think a lot of that's just him naturally as the interior D lineman. He can rush the passer really well. And your best coverage safety last year was Derek Williams, walked on campus that way. Your best coverage corner last year was probably arguably Malik Muhammad in coverage. I mean, I don't know. Terrence Brooks was really consistent too. But Terrence Brooks, like I said, that that's natural for him. I do think a lot of that comes naturally for those guys. So I think that's what the coaches are figuring out, and I agree with it.
Good stuff. Spring practice, of course, starts next week, and on Texas football, the On Texas Football channel all over it. Pro Day coming up next week as well, that Texas Football Coaches Clinic. It's going to be a busy week, and it'll really crank up all the way to the spring game. On Texas football and the Tuesday live stream brought to you by Texas Electricity Ratings. For those of y'all still living in Texas, and if you're not, you need to get back here soon enough. Major cities, especially with deregulated electricity like Dallas and Houston, you understand that deregulated electricity and the market can be very confusing. TER Ratings, with Texas Electricity Ratings, the shopping website that lets you compare your prices, read customer reviews, find a good electricity that fits your needs. Also filters out a lot of the gimmicky plans, like websites like Power to Choose, others like that. They kind of trick you and the customers into expensive bills. So if you're in the market for new electricity and a plan there, shop TexasElectricityRatings.com. That's TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF on Texas football for all of your electricity needs. And they say hook them from Texas Electricity Ratings. Thank you all so much for the Texas Tuesday live stream. Rod, the Mel Kiper big board is out, and we'll have probably a couple more Mel Kiper big boards before the draft in late April. But
yep,
a couple of Longhorns featured with Mel Kiper. What's the latest?
He came out. Now, he basically put out 25 players on his big board. I don't know exactly why he did it, but I think he does it because if you look at most NFL teams, they have between like 17 and 25 first round grades. No team rarely has 32 first round grades. They just don't do that. So maybe this is him saying, hey, these are my first round grades. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but he's got top 25 players on his big board. And he's got Xavier Worthy and Byron Murphy as the only two Longhorns ranked on his 25 player or 25 prospect big board. He's got Xavier Worthy at number 23, the number 23rd prospect overall, and he's got Byron Murphy at number 25 on this list. Now, he's always liked Xavier Worthy. As a matter of fact, he likes both of the Texas receivers. In his wide receiver rankings, he's got Xavier Worthy, the 5th best receiver, and he's got A.D. Mitchell, the 6th best receiver. So he likes the Texas receiver. I've heard him say actually on it was on a show on the weekend, actually, I listened to with Mel Kiper, where he said, where they asked him who are the most underrated receivers in the draft, and he said, oh, it's the Texas guys. They're the most underrated receivers in the draft. So he really likes them. And I think actually why Byron Murphy is so low, because I think he really liked T'Vondre Sweat, actually, because I heard him say that prior to the combine. I think the combine might have turned him off a little bit about T'Vondre Sweat, and Byron Murphy's workout obviously blew everybody away. So I think Byron Murphy rose in his rankings, and that's why he's got him like the last prospect on his top 25 big board. Because I don't think he was I think he was more of a Sweat guy than a Murphy guy, but now he's being forced to be kind of a Murphy guy, and his Sweat has nowhere to be found in his rankings.
Okay. CJ, what's your gut here as we're 6 weeks out to the draft now? Free agency is happening, so players are getting signed up, but they're also filling holes on spots. That's going to change draft needs. We know that 6 weeks from now. What's the number in your head of Longhorns? Let's say in the top 50 picks in this draft. Mel Kiper just had 25. Do you have a thought of top 50, which would be middle of the first round, or the whole first round, middle of the second?
Yeah, no, it's kind of fun because I have two thoughts here. The first is I think you'll see 3 Longhorns go in the first round in that top 50. I think you'll see 4. I think Jatavian Sanders will be that 4th guy. I think T'Vondre Sweat will fall right outside of it. And then Jonathan Brooks, unfortunately, will probably squeak into the 3rd round, which will be a steal for anybody that ends up grabbing them. But the other thing is, any type of mock draft that you see leading up to the beginning of free agency, I mean, you can basically throw that completely out the window aside from probably the first 5 or 10 picks. Because, I mean, everybody that's kind of in that 25 and beyond range, things have changed quite a bit, and I've looked at it from my own mock draft perspective. I thought Jonathan Brooks, in that late second round, early third round to the Green Bay Packers was a perfect fit. Well, now they add Josh Jacobs. They get rid of Aaron Jones as we expected, but they pay a big money back with Josh Jacobs there. Things probably aren't going to look that bright there. I had Jatavian Sanders going to the Chargers in the early second round. Well, they just go out and pay Will Dissly. So, you see the team needs that these franchises have at the moment. And you're like, yeah, it'd make perfect sense for them to go out and snag a Texas Longhorn at that spot. Well, doesn't always work out that easily. If it did, it wouldn't be that difficult to be an NFL GM. And so I think at this point, getting an idea of how these NFL free agencies are going to play out just a little bit longer gives you all the reason to think that, hey, I saw a mock draft the other day with 3 Longhorns going from 25 to 35. You can go ahead and crumple that one up, throw it behind you, and get rid of it because it won't matter by the time these pro days come around because, again, you'll be a weekend of free agency. And for the most part, every team in the NFL will go out and go get some big talent and kind of get some excitement around their free agency, except for the Dallas Cowboys, it seems, but to each their own. But, hey, I do think, going into the next week or two when it comes to the NFL mock drafts and kind of where guys are finally falling, you'll get a clearer understand 1 month out from the NFL draft just where these guys will fall when it comes draft night.
Agreed. And with the rush of running backs, right? I mean, the market for receivers has been very slow because it's a great receiver draft, right? So you can go pluck a guy in this draft. The running backs have been flooded. I mean, everyone's gotten a job essentially, and Texans pick up Joe Mixon today, Derrick Henry to the Ravens. I mean, so it's really becoming pretty obvious the Cowboys are going to take Jonathan Brooks in the second round because they haven't added anybody.
That's exactly it.
No, you're right about that. It is a poor reflection, I guess, on what the evaluators think of this running back class coming out. That is bad news for Jonathan Brooks. I think he's definitely going to drop in the draft. And I don't know when the first running back is going to be taken in this draft. You actually could have the first running back taken like late in the second round. I want to say, here's the stat. The lowest the first running back selected in the NFL draft was in 2014. Bishop Sankey was taken 54th. That was he was the first running back taken. But just one other time was the first running back selected lower than 37th overall. So usually, right around that, well, you had him going, CJ, right around there is usually where the first running back is taken. This season, though, with that free agency class of running backs, he may be onto something. We may look at this being a historically low first running back drafted overall in the draft. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know when the first running back is going because Jonathan Brooks, he's not going to help you right away. So it'll be a luxury pick for a team when they pick him.
Yeah. And the Cowboys don't have that right now. I know a lot of Cowboy fans on Texas Livestream are like, what are we doing? Rebuild might be on in Dallas. It kind of feels like at this point, even though Jerry won't admit that.
Yeah, W.A. Jones, I'm sorry for bringing the cloudiness around the Cowboys right now. I hope you had a great meal, but, for the next month, we can at least fantasize about a good draft in Dallas as we've seen the Texans down south start making some really impressive moves so far. So let's figure it out, Cowboys. I'm with you.
Yeah, the only Cowboys news has been a lawsuit with Dak Prescott. That's not good. That's not good. You don't ever want to see that. But yeah, that's where they are. But we'll talk more Longhorns moving forward. Obviously the pro day. Hey, I was going to ask you as the pro day, which is coming up next week. Rod, you went through this as well. I mean, if you're AD Mitchell or your X-Man or these guys who really balled out at the combine, is there any reason to go through work at the pro day, or are you just doing interviews and showing up to support your teammates?
Yeah, I think with the performance that those guys had, sometimes there's a drill or two that you didn't do at the combine that you decide, you know what, I'm going to do that drill at pro day. But with the way they both performed at the combine in the drills they did participate in, considering both of them were, AD Mitchell, best broad jump of the wide receivers, third best 40-yard dash. X-Man breaks the record for the 40-yard dash, has one of the highest vertical jumps of the wide receiver class. Yeah, those guys, I doubt they work out. Every now and then some guys will decide, no, I want to do that. I missed that 3-cone. I'm going to do that 3-cone. No, those guys are pretty much done. They'll just go show up, shake hands, kiss babies. Guys like, JT Sanders may decide to do some of that stuff that he didn't do. They may want to see him work out. There are some other guys, of course, that didn't, Jalen Ford didn't really do much at all. He did I think the broad jump and the vertical. Jalen Ford might end up working out there and doing most of the stuff. Trying to think of some of the other guys. And Ryan Watts worked out pretty well, and I believe he did everything. And
yeah, Ryan Watts had a really good showing at the combine. I'm
really
kind of
good
on
showing.
the fence with what we're going to see from him. Maybe he'll run, maybe he'll do some of the agility stuff, but 4.53 at 6'3", 208. I mean, that's enough to get drafted right there with 2 years of starting production at the University of Texas. I think you're going to see a pretty good time again for him if he does test. But, Rod, to your point, it's going to be a massive day for guys like Keelan Robinson, Jordan Whittington, and Jalen Ford just to get in front of these scouts one last time and really kind of, cement themselves as NFL prospects in the eyes of these scouts and executives. For Jordan Whittington especially, who did not perform at the Senior Bowl, did not perform at the Combine, this is a big-time money day, and no one has more to gain from this Texas Pro Day next week or next Wednesday than Jordan Whittington and what he can really help his stock out in what we've talked about being a very light, kind of shallow back end of that NFL draft. If he's able to squeak in, you have 3 guys drafted at the wide receiving spot for the University of Texas. That's just the biggest selling point you will have if you're Chris Jackson, Steve Sarkisian, and the offensive staff. But it's going to take a big, big day from Jordan Whittington because we know deep down there's no one that exemplifies this Texas Longhorns program than Jordan Whittington. Everything that he's fought and overcome and the attitude that he brings to the Moncrief facility every single day, that's what you want. He's the ultimate competitor, the ultimate teammate. Everything that you hear exemplifies him as a person. But on the football field, GMs don't keep their jobs by signing good people. They got to prove once more that they're good football players as well. So it's going to be a big, big day next weekend or next Wednesday for Jordan Whittington. One last audition for the NFL.
I agree. That's the make or break day for Jay Witt, man. It is because I don't know if he doesn't get drafted, he wants to be a priority free agent. He's got to show up on pro day and have a good day. Really good one.
Yep. Also a guy like Ryan Sanborn, a punter. I mean, I don't know what they do on pro day, but that's a guy that was a 4-year starter at Stanford and Texas. And, he's a guy that could end up as a free agent looking for a kicker. He was really good at Texas, also did some field goal kicking. So, those kind of days. And it's not the hustle and bustle of the combine where everything's going a million miles an hour. Get a little bit of time to do an interview and really talk and show out with these guys. I think that's important next Wednesday. And it'll be interesting to see how much of the big brass shows up next week to see the Longhorns and be a part of what's going on in Austin, Texas next Wednesday. Could be back to the old days, Rod, when you guys were playing and then beyond you where, a lot of coaches and GMs were showing up just to see what was going on. That'll be pretty cool and a good way to launch spring football for the Texas Longhorns coming up next week. But that's next Wednesday. Spring practice will get cranking up. Obviously, we'll be on next Tuesday night with the On Texas Football channel, brought to you by Texas Electricity Ratings. And we'll have a lot of previews of what's coming in the spring, the 4 weeks of workouts. And those guys need to be careful out there on spring break, Rod. It's spring break time.
Hey, I told Cam the same thing. I told Cam, I said, hey, man, it's spring break. Have fun. Don't get too wild. Make good decisions. I sounded like a dad. I was like, hey, make good decisions. And he was like, no, I'm going to stay in town for a while and relax and be low key. And I was like, ain't no damn way you could ever be low key. You're too damn big. So everybody going to know who you are, where you are. So make good decisions. No, but I'm with you, man. I would say this group, Sark's group and his culture, we haven't had a lot of, knocking on wood, we haven't had a lot of those stories where guys getting in trouble off the field while Sark's been here. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure it does happen. I'm sure it may be coming, but it seems like the guys are doing a really good job of if they are making bad decisions off the field, at least they're not getting caught.
Yeah, we cover up. And as we've seen with players and recruits, I mean, the locker room will root them out, right? We don't want these guys.
Exactly.
They don't fit. They got to go, which is a good sign. A healthy yard for sure. Not a lot of weeds are allowed to punch through. All right, guys, good stuff tonight. Appreciate everybody checking in. Longhorns up in baseball right now, 7-1 in the 6th inning over Incarnate Word. So that's a good thing. Texas women's basketball tipping off right now in the Big 12 tournament championship game. Good luck to them. Vic Schaefer's team, with a win over Iowa State tonight, could possibly be one of the top 4 national seeds, big picture, come tournament time with the women's bracket. So good luck to them this evening. Texas men begin play tomorrow against Kansas State on the basketball side. Football will be back tomorrow morning with Coffee and Football, CJ and the crew. Is that you're on that tomorrow, CJ?
I will not be. It'll be Jerry, Bobby, and Blake tomorrow morning as we get ready for, again, 1 week out from the start of spring football and the Texas Pro Day.
All right, guys. Have a great night. We'll do this again next Tuesday. And, of course, the conversation is ongoing on Texas football. Rod, have a great night. CJ, go see if you can find Sydney Sweeney. You know what I mean? Shoot that shot, brother. All right, everybody have a good night. Hook 'em.